Welcome again to another edition of the Phil Reisman Show, streaming live from the top of the Empire State Building, and I'm your host, King Kong. Just kidding. To my left, and I don't mean that in a political sense necessarily, is Mike Kaplowitz, chairman of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. Mike is here to give us a 6-month report card on how the county is doing or how the county board is doing. Actually, you did the report card, and you're giving yourself the grade, so there's something not quite right about that, but anyway. What do you give yourself as a grade overall?
B plus.
A B plus, okay.
Yeah.
And Mike calls this report a report to shareholders, meaning you out there, Mr. and Mrs. Citizen, and Mike, you've used this term before, shareholder, and that would imply that people are buying a stock in something here.
Some ownership.
Some ownership. But when you buy stock, you get some kind of monetary return.
You get dividends.
Yeah, okay.
And you have an interest.
Yeah, but you get something.
And you get
money.
And you get to mature.
You get to mature. Okay.
Mixing my stocks and my bonds.
All right. But what do you mean by? I mean, you mean that.
Well, first, before we start, I just want to note your column today on hats.
Oh, yeah.
And
you got a funny hat?
I have a few here. And,
oh my God.
This is the first hat I pulled out today. I think this is actually my wife's pool hat, but I figured this is one I will never be caught dead in.
Okay. All right.
And then this is the one that I got.
It's a little comedy here.
Traveling through the western part of America.
Well, I kind of like.
And this one, it was a nice looking hat until I put it on, and it turned into something else. But my favorite is this one, which is my Entergy hard hat.
Oh, well, there you go.
Which I got when I toured Entergy, and they also told me when I was looking at the spent fuel pool to bring my bathing suit, which I chose not to bring and not to dive in.
Okay.
And I promise to myself, heck with anybody else, never to wear one of these nor any other hat in public service.
Wow.
So I just got rained on, and that's what umbrellas are made for.
These are unavoidable. People have to wear these when they go to plants and things like that. But as I mentioned in today's column, the hairnet that Rob Astorino had to wear that's not happening. You know.
And in my business, the hard hat is always a good thing to have.
Sure. Right, because you never know what's going to fall.
You never know what's coming at you.
But never wear a beanie copter, one of those foam, oversized football 10-gallon hats. Yep. Or a German helmet from either war, World War I or II.
Spiked or otherwise.
Spiked or otherwise, yes. So that's good shtick. You talk about the shareholders, and you mentioned in your report, which I have right here, and I have to commend you for keeping it to 2 pages. Very good. The tax levy has been kept down for 4 years. But, I ran into a guy the other day, and he's a very intelligent guy. In fact, he's a former judge who says, how come they keep saying my taxes have gone down when I live in Rye, not me, this guy lives in Rye, and my taxes went up? Now, you and I know, right? But a lot of people don't know.
Right.
Because when they hear that, okay, the tax has been held, they say, well, how come mine went up?
Sure. Well, first, I put quotes around shareholders because what I was trying to be a little cute, but basically say that we all own Westchester County government. We're sent there as representatives, and as the owners of the county, I wanted to report back on the first 6 months. Procedurally, how's it working? I held out the theory. As chairman, yeah. Right. I held out that if we all worked together, all had some skin in the game, all legislators were either in leadership or had chairmanship of a committee, that in fact people would then have more motivation to work together. Further, I held out the theory that we would do much better in the boardroom and in the committee room than in the courtroom. And I'm proud to say that we've initiated no lawsuits in the last 6 months. We have.
See, that's an accomplishment. Yeah.
Even the one lawsuit that we were called into chambers, we said to the judge recently, we got rid of our attorney. We're not going to hire counsel. I don't want to put any more good money after bad. And Your Honor, make your decision.
Okay.
And so that is, from a procedural standpoint, what we've tried to put forward. What have we accomplished? In 6 months, what we've accomplished, and why I gave myself a B+. There's more work to be done.
Right.
But whether first it's the fiduciary side, our first job is to look after people's money.
Okay.
And as a board of directors, we have to deliver good product, good service at the lowest possible cost. We started with the Board of Legislators itself. We're a department, about a $4.6 million department. Right. We're running about $100,000 to $200,000 in the black. That is less than budget this year.
Okay.
And we'll have our final numbers at the end of the year. Got rid of Blackberries. I got rid of my car, the chairman's car at the beginning. Right. And so we've done a lot of good things. To your friend's point, on the overall issue of tax levy, we're 4 years running. We had a -2% county tax levy cut, a 0, a 0, followed by a 0.
Right.
So for 4 years, county taxes have not gone up. Interestingly, when Rob Astorino said we're the highest county tax in America, therefore vote for me for county executive, it had a certain compelling nature to it.
Right.
What's interesting, two things. One is we've gone 4 years and we have not raised county taxes, and we're still the highest tax county in the country.
This is the point that this guy was saying.
School taxes.
Well, yeah, it wasn't just that, though. I mean, because the county portion of his tax bill
about 17%. No, the county, what depends on the appraised value, we'd have to look at.
It has to come, it's a zero-sum game when you do county taxes. If you live in certain communities, your county tax bill actually goes down.
It depends. We levy we levy $548 million. We have to collect it from 963,000 people.
Right.
But the value of a house in Rye relative to a house in Yonkers or Solmers or wherever could go up or down.
Right.
However, if you
people don't understand
correct,
that,
but if you look over a 10-year period of time, it's kind of like the market. It tends to the average. It tends to even out. And so Yonkers a number of years ago had a huge 25% spike. I don't know if you remember that one.
Right.
They were screaming and
yelling.
That,
yes.
Well, it had followed a 10 or 15% reduction the year before. So when you average it out, it tends to.
Okay.
The other good news is that communities that have had increase in county tax generally have home values that have risen, which is at least it's going in the right direction for the right reason in that respect.
All right. So I mean, we've established many times the big bite is the
17% is county.
Yeah,
60% is 60 to 70% of school tax.
Has anyone? I mean, remember Westchester 2000? You know,
Sal Precioso.
Right, Sal Precioso, and the whole thing about consolidating things. Has anyone done a subsequent study about what would happen if you created one county police department, for example? Just right there. How much money would be saved? And I mean, and so we could get over this debate about the cost of taxes and property tax. Seems to me those are the only answers. I mean,
we are quietly doing that, Phil.
Yeah.
We are going to be voting on Mount Kisco giving up its police department to the county, like Cortland did and Ossining did. So we are moving in that direction, but unlike Nassau, because we're doing it on the carrot, not the stick.
Yeah.
And what we're saying to them is, if you think it's valuable, and the reason it saves money for the towns and municipalities is they get rid of the management level, if you will, the officers, and then we continue with the line officers themselves.
Okay, I want to jump to actually this is sort of relevant to your report because you mentioned the County Charter Commission and the change of basically the blueprint for how county government is run. Get into that, but specifically on ethics and the politics that's going on right now. It must be interesting for you as a chairman, a Democratic chairman, to be dealing with all of the issues, and while there is the county executive running for governor at the same time. He's a Republican.
What word did you use?
What did I say?
Interesting.
Interesting.
That's fair.
In the Confucian sense.
Yeah.
So recently there's been this little brouhaha about Astorino, the county executive, and there's been made an issue of it by a number of Democrats, including Peter Hark, he's a county legislator, saying that there must be an ethics investigation into Astorino's $30,000 side job as a consultant for some radio media company, and he's called for the independent counsel, which has fraught with all kinds of implications that this is somehow some kind of scandalous thing. Democrat. First of all, as you know, the Ethics Commission is barely operative. I don't think it's met since Calvin Coolidge was president, speaking of funny hats. The same Democrats voted on an ethics waiver for, and I know you didn't, but you can explain, an ethics waiver to allow Bill Ryan, your predecessor as the chairman of the board, to get a faster inroad to a well-paid job in the county medical center.
Sure.
Plus, your other predecessor, Ken Jenkins, is a sitting county legislator, and by my reading of the current ethics provisions of the Charter Commission, should be in violation also because he's got a job as the IDA president of Yonkers while he's sitting on the county board. So, what is this situational ethics here? I mean, what's going on? And is this also productive for, the county board? You talked about all the work you guys are doing to be playing in this governor's race like this.
I'm desperately trying. We've been successful. We have not only one candidate, but both candidates from Westchester County, both the incumbent and the challenger. it has put extraordinary pressure on the board and focus on, frankly, Westchester County Board activities.
Right.
It's seen now in another prism. It's hard enough anyway.
Right.
There's no question that what I'm trying to do is wend my way through to the shareholders and say, we have a product to deliver at the lowest cost. Let's stick to it. But there's some things on the ethics front that have clearly dusted up. For the second time now in 7 months, we have, whether there's the Bill Ryan situation, where he was asking for a waiver where normally he'd have to wait 1 year. He wanted to work for the medical center. We, the Board of Legislators, were asked to vote on a colleague sitting, in my case, literally right next to me, to my left. It put us in a position I thought was unfair, and a position that we were just not that wise. We were not that Solomon-like. Now we have this issue where you have the charter that says you're supposed to devote full-time duties and not hold other public offices. Well, being a consultant by any accounts is not another public office. Does it somehow get in the way of full-time duties, and what does that mean? My first job as chairman is to populate what you said, Coolidge days. I'm not sure when it last met. Evidently it met yesterday, but of the 7 members, our reading is that only one of the 7 are, at this point, completely legal. That, in fact, we need to repopulate the very Board of Ethics, which is there to help us investigate and potentially rule on these conflicts, which seem to be coming now with some frequency. So what I've asked our appointments committee chairman, Ben Boykin, to do is to get involved with populating the Board of Ethics. It requires a certain number of Republicans, Democrats, different party members, geography involved, and give us as objective and independent an entity as possible. What we're not good at, Phil, as a legislature, is investigations like this. There's an AG, there's a DA. We are really good at making laws and discussing that. We're not good at these kind of investigations. The only thing I would say to your chronology is just be careful. If you live in a glass house, you need to know that somebody could pick up a stone and throw it right through your house too.
I think the main concern that I would have about this kind of thing, which is not exactly the most transparent, disclosure form, is whether or not this, money of this type is being reported to the IRS. I mean, that would be my main concern, I think. Well, it'd be hard. But I can't imagine that this is. No,
I would think if it's a court. Well, that's a fair concern, but I would think that would be that if it's a 1099 as a consultant, they would issue that 1099. Does he pick it up? I would think so. I mean, that would be outright tax fraud. But the question is, as raised, does it create a conflict with our charter, and is there any inherent conflict with the contractor? In this case, I believe they've done some work, for example, with Clear Channel, and we have a contract with Clear Channel. Westchester has done some billboards, as I understand. But does that create a conflict? So here's what the Board of Ethics did yesterday, evidently, and to show that they're independent, I found out, chairman of the Board of Legislators, I found out about it last evening watching Channel 12 late at night, and they evidently met yesterday and have now hired a consultant for a study that's going to take as much as, I guess, till May, presumably, to look at 700 of these, everybody's conflict. Now, it would be a little bit like the kid in the back maybe cheating on his homework, maybe not, and then lining up all 700 school kids against the school wall and bringing them all outside. I don't know if that was an overreach or whether, in fact, this consultant can do some good work.
I want to jump to and this plays into the race too, this governor's race, is your work, your efforts to somehow bring a semblance of sanity and, I guess, closure and it doesn't sound like it's going to happen anytime soon, to this federal housing settlement thing. Another issue that I think a lot of people don't have a fundamental grasp of. I also get the feeling that a lot of people are just not paying attention to it, but I may be wrong on that. But I still think it's an interesting issue, and it's obviously consuming a lot of money, it's consuming a lot of time, and it has, I think you actually outlined it fairly well in your report here about what the issues are, but why don't you just describe, Mike, if you would, briefly.
This show's what, 3-4 hours? What's the show?
I know. We're going to try to get this done in like 10 minutes.
Now, Monopoly, they get to deal out the cards, and so you can shorten it.
Right. This goes back to 2009 when Andy Spano was county executive. They always start with that.
Right.
Okay.
And he failed to, while saying that he studied race as a potential impediment to housing, never really did. It led to the 2009 housing settlement, whereby the federal government and the county entered into this settlement. It passed.
And the issue was they were taking money from the federal government for community block grants, which are, by the way, Anyway, but they didn't fulfill the
analysis of impediments. They didn't study race, and as was the key there.
Analysis of impediments to fair housing,
affordable fair housing.
Okay, that's what it was.
And the settlement,
didn't do it.
And that's right.
Right. This is Andy Spano, Democrat. Larry Schwartz, Deputy Executive.
The previous administration, and it was
now. Andrew Cuomo's right-hand man, and they're calling Rob Astorino a racist.
And it led to
How does that work?
And it led to rhetorically speaking, it led to the 2009 housing settlement, which is the law of Westchester County. And when Mr. Astorino got elected, he was pledged to support it. It has three basic components. Build 750 units, of which we are on schedule.
In 31 communities.
Yes, that have a certain percentage of African American and Hispanic below certain levels. Correct. Second is support or promote a what's called source of income legislation, which was fought up to the federal circuit court level, lost, and ultimately promoted and signed by the county.
Those two issues are pretty much done.
We're down to the last one.
Now we're down to the last one, which is the most interesting.
It's called the analysis of impediments. The very thing that got us into this problem is still what's before us. And I have here,
and when we say impediments, what are we talking about? Like 4-acre zoning and that kind of thing? Is that what I mean? That's what we're talking about.
Got so excited, Phil. I knocked off my microphone. Let me put this right back on.
About live
TV. Yeah. I brought the small piece of the lexicon before us, the agreement, section 32 of the actual settlement. The county shall complete within 120 calendar days at the end of this stipulation and order an analysis of impediments within its jurisdiction that complies with the guidance of HUD's Fair Housing Planning Guide. The AI must be deemed acceptable by HUD. These are the important 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. Okay, they have not accepted it, and so Rob has said, I have filed it.
He did 8 of them.
He just done 8 of them, and what it comes down to is the work that your newspaper did, the good work. You guys laid out for us.
You hear that, guys?
Okay, you laid out for us a test that I think I was the only one in Westchester that read and cut certainly and brought with me, which is what is HUD really asking for? The state test and the federal test. 2 analyses must be done. The state test is called Berenson. The federal test is called Huntington. The state test looks to socioeconomic barriers to housing. The federal test looks to zoning that might be problematic on a racial basis. This test was done by the monitor. The county did an incomplete Berenson, passable, but the monitor has done a state test that has shown that of the 31 communities, only 6 have a problem. Zoning in the other towns are fine. And of those 6, he's in communication with all 6. And we're hopeful in short order we can check off the state test. The federal test, the county administration has fought forever. They don't want to do it. Now, they did a sample. They put their little toe in the water and wound up with 10 communities. And it was stated very famously by HUD, not acceptable to us. Remember what it says, it has to be acceptable. The monitor has said, and that's why the good work I think the board has done, has said to the monitor, you go ahead and do the test. While everybody's arguing over here, you do the test and see whether in fact there are impediments to housing and whether in fact it's work that needs to be done. We believe, the county board, a number of us, that since the Berenson test is showing that Westchester does not have exclusionary and discriminatory zoning, and any modifications are done voluntarily, quietly, community by community, that in fact that test and that chassis could lead us to the same level of success under the federal test. If we're right, and the monitor finishes his work and comes back with no communities that have a Huntington problem, maybe some that have a Huntington problem, but we can voluntarily work with these communities, we can get to the end of this problem. We can actually solve and file an AI.
Have they been officially removed from the list then? I mean, have they?
Mamaronec's off the list, correct. Well, and other communities are shortly going to be.
Right, but the federal government hasn't agreed to that yet.
No, on the state test, they have. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the Berenson. The Berenson.
Now, because it's interesting about the town of Mamaroneck, and specifically because there is a town that has no vacant land. I mean, so a lot of this has to do with building, but it's mostly, as you say, about the impediments to what? To changing...
it could be in a commercial zone that you maybe have accessory apartments. It could be that you provide additional opportunities in other parts of the town where there's not necessarily open land, but an ability to redevelop.
Which are the 6 that are still...
you have Harrison, Pound Ridge, Pelham, Ossining, Lewisboro, and I don't know if I said Pelham.
You did,
yeah, I did, and one more.
Bronxville?
No. Well, it'll come to me before we finish.
But I mean, there was a recent. I'm sure you read it. The recent Wall Street Journal had a interesting piece about this issue on the political end.
Yes.
In which they said Democrats still aren't. I'm going to read it. Democrats still aren't satisfied because Mr. Astorino refuses to let federal housing officials expand the deal judicially. The Department of Housing and Urban Development is pressuring Westchester to declare that its zoning practices are discriminatory merely because of its many neighborhoods aren't as racially integrated as HUD deems necessary. And then they go on to say, and this is what Rob Astorino has been saying over and over again, as you know, Westchester would then have to build thousands more public housing units, submit to HUD investigations, and let the feds seize control of local zoning to determine where to build homes and schools.
So the irony is...
That's pretty...
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
Yeah.
The irony is it's the exact opposite. Yeah. If we don't comply with the 2009 housing settlement, not one word more, not one word less, and the Monitor in his recent semi-annual report, and it's all on our website and you can check it out, has said 750 are the number of units. I have no power. Nobody has any power to expand beyond. If, however, the county persists and does not meet this third necessity of the AI, guess what Judge Cote in New York is going to do, district court judge?
Fine.
Potentially. What else?
Yeah.
Maybe reopen the settlement.
Yeah.
Maybe more units. You know, there's a Rutgers 2005 study that says there's a regional need of 10,000 units. It's crazy, in my opinion, and I have colleagues on the supervisory level, mostly on the other party, who have said, stick with Rob's position, let the judge ultimately make the decision. I think it's crazy to let a judge decide. First of all, it's our job as legislators and the executive branch to work that out. Second of all, we need to negotiate with HUD to come to some agreement. Third, I would never take my future and fate and throw it in the hands of a district court judge.
So when people say, and HUD, as some have been quoted, as saying that this is a grand experiment, quote unquote, using Westchester as a place to open up this whole idea of, you know, changing the zoning and everything else, you reject that?
Because we've pushed back against it, and the regional administrator didn't have a regional administrator at the time. Holly Light, who's the administrator with HUD, the work of the Monitor, Jim Johnson, and the certifications that we've gotten, and our confidence level says to us, we have to uphold the 2009 settlement, we have every reason to uphold the settlement, and we're going to hold them to that settlement. And I don't care about grand experiments or not. We have to build 750, promote that law, and fill out an acceptable AI. And Rob, Mr. Astorino, has not done the acceptable AI. And just because you tell the teacher after 8 times you submitted your homework, it must be you, the teacher's going to at some point say, no, it's not me, you're not giving us the homework that I expect.
But didn't he do a PACE study?
Yes, but the
liberal bastion.
Mr. Nolan, but he did not look to the 31 communities, read the study. It's been misquoted. He looked at the macro Berenson test. He did not do a Huntington, and he did not go community by community. The Monitor went community by community. The reason we're going to get out from under this is because the Monitor has done the good work that, frankly, county planning should have done.
And you say in your report that this could, if things continue the way they are, without some kind of sane intervention, which I guess is what you're purporting to do, that this could end up costing the county $500 million.
Or more. You want to go top down or bottom up? How about the original was $60 million fine times 3. It was under the False Claims Act of 1863. It's trebled. Interception of federal aid. We get about $220, $230 million a year per year. We've already lost CDBG monies of $7.4 million for last year, $5.2 million this year.
Maybe, right?
Possibly. We were able to buy time till the end of September. And if we lose, by the way, Phil, year 1 in the cycle, we lose all 3 years of the cycle. We're going to lose $15.6 million on top of the $7 million. And what if Rob's correct? What if the federal government really wants to build $1 billion worth of 10,000 more housing? He's on a path. That's the quickest way to get us to that point. You fight this. Do not submit an AI. Let Judge Cote decide. She potentially reopens this settlement. Forget fines and penalties. You're looking at, you know what, maybe we should incorporate the Rutgers study.
You know what's amazing to me about this? I mean, from day one, when this first happened back in 2009, just before Rob's victory in the election against Andy Spano, that this all has to do with community block, taking federal community block. Why do they take this money in the first place?
CDBG monies. They've taken
I always get that wrong because I always think it's like Mud Club, CBGB, you know. Anyway,
Kate Karski said we shouldn't. Rob Astorino now says we shouldn't. The horse is out of the barn, or as I put it, you already bought the movie ticket.
What do they do with this money? They put these like what? They put these like waste paper baskets in the middle of traffic islands with this money?
It's less valuable to some communities. It's actually pretty valuable to some. Ossining is losing about $1.1 million over a 3-year period. There's housing, there are sidewalks, there's senior centers, there's transportation, there are a lot of programs to that do come out of it.
Right.
Where I come from, they don't basically use it. The northern and eastern part of the county foregoes most of the CDBG money.
Pleasant didn't take any.
They didn't take any.
So
that's
they're
right.
not even on this list.
No,
and that's Astorino's home.
No, but then they went back into the consortium.
Oh, they did?
Just in time to get caught up. Yeah, yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is that, I mean, this money, $12 million, is basically being, or the 7, and then potentially the 5, is being
plus 5 and 5. It's a total of $22 million.
All right. Well, I mean, it's not going to communities that probably can afford to suck it up a little bit. I mean, it's where this money is needed is places like Mount Vernon.
But Mr. Astorino's point is, because CDBG is not, we can live without. Right. Which is debatable to some communities and not to others. However, therefore, we don't have to do an AI and we can fight HUD. That conclusion is not warranted.
I mentioned the ethics thing with Astorino and everything else, and it just strikes me, once again, we enter the realm of hypocrisy here when the governor is basically calling Astorino a racist. Especially when his right-hand man was the deputy county executive when this lawsuit happened all along, and his press person Sue Tolchin called the lawsuit garbage at the time. Is he a racist? I mean, is Astorino...
No. This is not the first time that moderation loses out and the extremes win.
Yeah.
It happens time and time again. Phil, I'm chairman because the theory I have is that intellectual honesty plus reason can equal inevitable victory, inevitable success. But it takes a darn long time. And we have to do the 2009 settlement. Whether you think it's right for housing or whether you think it's right to get us out from under penalties, we have to do it. And when you start name-calling on either side, it makes the debate that much tougher, and frankly, it makes the action steps that much harder to get to.
So what do you think is what do you think is going to happen in terms of time? Is this going to be, a year from now, are we going to think, it's...
How long does it take to do a full Huntington, which sounds like a Broadway show, and it has images
like
that you wouldn't necessarily...
full Huntington.
You wouldn't want to necessarily bring onto a family show like this. I don't know. We have a September end deadline to save 2012 Community Development Block Grant monies of $5.2 million. If not, we lose it, and when we lose 2013 and 14 as well. The county executive has already said he's not going to file papers for the 15 to 17 cycle. We could have the death of federal money, which is disappointing, Phil, because we pay, those are our tax dollars that did go down to Washington. How many representatives through the years have gotten elected? Vinnie Libel got elected up at the state for bringing our money back to us, right? Uncle Vinny. So we want our money back. We already paid for it. Rob's idea, Mr. Astorino's idea of let's double tax ourselves, do it again, so that we can then have our own CDBG is not a mature idea, because we don't want to pay tax the second time just to get our own money back.
Well, you do think he's mismanaged this, though, obviously.
I do, and I would encourage, yes, of course, and I'm encouraging him to manage it better. And this is one where I'm not afraid to call, again, intellectual honesty. If it's not right, it's not right. This has, by all accounts, not been handled well. I'm not looking for blame. I'm not looking for scapegoats. I'm not looking for name calling. But at the same time, we can't put Westchester in a place where you could lose hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mike, we have 1 minute left because we spent most of it on this other stuff. But if you want to, is there anything else in your 6-month report you want to mention?
Playland. It's the report actually was a rousing success. We did our due diligence. We kicked the tires. This entity, well-intended, good faith, failed, and they didn't have it. And you know what? You better lose it now around the table rather than when the rides are running and you're running a place into the ground. So the board did its job. We're now trying to work with the county executive and hoping he will work with us to get a new vendor in.
That whole idea basically imploded because of this field house that was.
No, that was the last piece. But we couldn't get financials on any of the component pieces. We don't even know whether the amusement park operation would run based on what they did. How would the ice casino run? How would any of those run?
But I'm talking about politically.
The face of it, the piece that brought Ryan was the field house.
And that was the end.
It was done at that point.
Bringing the people in Rye. It's a whole different deal, man.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay, Mike Kaplowitz, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. I know it went fast, but we'll have you hopefully.
We'll do another shareholders report.
Okay. Don't buy any BlackBerry stock.
We got rid of BlackBerries.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Save money.
Why? See, it all went down after that. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. See you all next week. Take care.